An entitled jerk fired for manhandling female staff asked for a truthful job reference. So that's exactly what he got. My sister told me this story last Friday, and I just had to share it. Her previous employment was with a branch of a Swedish retail store. They sell expensive, luxurious furniture. When my sister was working there, they had about 20 people working the floor. The highest was the regional manager, the only Swedish person in the store. There were 5 more people working in the higher office, and the rest were floor attendants. Each person in the higher office covered a different part of the store. An accountant, a biller, HR, a purchaser, and an office head to whom basically everyone reported. My sister was the biller. I never cared enough to ask her what exactly she did, but it's not important. The purchaser, let's call him Jack, was a competent guy. He did his job to near perfection, and would often help others with theirs. He also went out on the floor interacting with people, but apart from the high office, floor attendants resented him. Not publicly, but my sister was paying enough attention to notice. Nobody would say anything specific though. They just said he was creepy, until one day when the boss came in. He would often work remotely and only came in during certain hours. Apparently, when he was about to enter the store, he saw from outside the window that Jack was pestering a female floor attendant. She was clearly very annoyed. The boss observed for a while and eventually caught Jack placing his hand on her thighs. He immediately called the higher office, all 5 of them, into a meeting. He asked Jack to clarify his intentions. Jack said they were just playing around. Now, as sickening as it may sound, in my country, this is somewhat normal. When girls get treated inappropriately like this, it's their fault for not covering themselves properly. In these instances, people would justify Jack's behavior and blame the victim instead. My generation is trying to reject this mindset, but some people are just built differently. But because the boss was not from my country, he saw this as a major issue. Despite Jack trying to plead that it's nothing, he decided to launch a store-wide investigation. His investigation specifically focused on the high office, including my sister, because he thought they might be covering for Jack. My sister said she actually thought she'd be fired, or at least reprimanded. She had never seen the boss so serious before. The result was alarming. Each and every female floor attendant, about 6 or 7 of them, said they'd been pestered by Jack at least once. Some even said he'd touched them without consent. The boss asked why nobody stepped up. They said they were ashamed and feared retaliation. Note that nobody ever actually threatened retaliation. People just assumed it, because that's usually what happens in my country. He then questioned the high office and found out that they were too busy to notice what was happening. After a week and a half, another meeting was scheduled, in which Jack was given the option to resign or be fired. No action was taken against anyone else in the high office, but they were told quite firmly that this kind of neglect could never happen again. Even at that meeting, Jack still insisted that it was nothing. He'd spent the whole duration of the investigation complaining to everyone in the store, including the woman he'd touched, that the boss was overreacting. People just gave him the stink eye, but he didn't seem to care. Things were quiet for a week or two, and then it got interesting. One day, the head office lady received a phone call from Jack, during which he asked if they'd be his reference for his new job interviews. She was taken back a bit and asked him, "You want to make us your reference?" "Yes," he said. "I believe I had done my work well enough for you guys to put in a good word. It's true, he's very efficient. In fact, they'd had a hard time finding his replacement. They ended up taking months to look for someone suitable." The office head reminded him of the commotion. "Oh, that?" he said. "I'm sure it's nothing. Just tell the truth, and I think they'll understand." The office head was still baffled. "Look," said Jack, "I won't ask for more. If someone calls, just tell them the truth. I'm sure it's nothing." Apparently, Jack still thought if people heard about it, they would agree with him. When the office head got off the phone, she was still stuttering. When everyone else heard about their conversation, they were as well. Nobody knew what to do with it, so they informed the boss. He said it's fine if that's what Jack wanted. Starting the following day, the boss came into the store daily. He instructed everyone that if they receive a call about Jack, it's to be directed straight to him. Now, I previously mentioned the boss wasn't from my country, but he's been in Vietnam for almost 7 years, so he can speak decently enough to take a few reference calls. When the call finally came, the whole office stopped working and started eavesdropping. Even some of the floor attendants joined in. My sister said that they could only hear the boss's side of the conversation, but it's pretty easy to guess at the whole picture. The boss started by praising Jack with words that would make even the ugliest of witches look like a fairy godmother. Then he dropped the bomb. "Anything you'll need to worry about. Oh, just that incident that gave us no choice but to let him go." The other caller asked for more. "I'm sure he's told you," the boss said, "but he put his hands on one of our female employees without her consent." I imagine the other side gasping before asking the obvious question. "Yes, just once," said the boss. He paused so the caller could sigh with relief. "Once that I caught him. Every other instance happened outside my presence. Yes, I have the meeting record in which he agreed to resign in order to avoid us taking further actions. Sure, just contact me via this number. If you want to know anything else, I'd be happy to help." 2 days later, Jack called the head office lady again to ask if anyone someone contacted them for his reference. She said yes, and assured him they were telling whoever called the truth about his performance. He said, "That's strange, because he was rejected in his latest interview. I wonder what could have been the reason." There's a lot to unpack in this story, but for those of you wondering, the OP later clarified that his sister does not work for IKEA, although you should have guessed that when he mentioned luxurious furniture. The sad part is, while the OP seems to think this type of behavior is unique to Vietnam, commenters from around the world have seen things like this happen at work, and in a lot of cases, employers won't actually mention this kind of conduct in a reference call unless it can be absolutely proven. This boss sounds like the kind of guy who would have done right by his employees no matter what, but Jack really sealed his own fate when he went out of his way to ask for an honest reference. Pro tip, when you get fired for gross misconduct, don't use that job as a reference. Second pro tip, don't get fired for gross misconduct. Not only is it creepy, but touching someone who won't touch you back is frankly kind of pathetic. I bought my son a house, and he repaid me by cutting me out of his wedding. Now he gets to find a new place to live. My wife and I bought a 4-bedroom house in Pennsylvania that my son lives in. Our son went to college in Pennsylvania and wanted to stay in the area, so we bought the house as a second home. We live in New Jersey and commute to Manhattan for work. We figured that he would have a place to live, and we could visit every so often and spend some quality time together. We pay the taxes and services/maintenance on the house. Our son pays for his groceries and the house utilities. All was going well for a few years. Then our son meets a girl and they get serious. We met her and she seems nice enough. They announce their engagement and she moves into the house with our son. Now for the problem, the wedding. We hold a little get-to-know-you barbecue at the PA house. My son and daughter are there, as are my son's fiance, her parents, and her sisters. We all seem to be getting along well. My wife, my daughter, my son, and his fiance go into the house along with her mother and sisters. A few minutes later, my wife and daughter come out really upset. They come over and tell me we're leaving and driving back to New Jersey. I try to find out what happened. Once we get back to Jersey, they calm down and tell me that our son and his fiance, along with her family, don't want us at the wedding. According to what I was told, we are not their kind of people. I was livid. I called my son and asked him what the heck this was about. He tells me that her family feels that we are not good enough and will embarrass them at a family wedding. As such, we're all uninvited from the ceremony. I let a week go by to calm myself down and drive back to my son's house. The new future in-laws are in the house along with the fiance. It appears that they all moved into the house. They ask me why I'm there. I tell them that since we aren't invited to the wedding, I was coming over to talk to my son. They tell me to leave their house. I lost it and told them that they had 30 days to get out. Tell my son I'm selling the house and he can find somewhere else to live with all of you. I go straight to a realtor in town and list the house for sale. They call my son at work and tell him what I said. Apparently they thought that he owned the house. He calls me and asks why I'm selling his house. I tell him I paid for it along with the taxes on it and it is mine. He was living there rent-free, but since he doesn't want us in his new life, he has to get out. I told him the same thing I told his future in-laws. They have 30 days to get out. Then I'll get a lawyer and have them evicted. Am I wrong for taking a hard stance on this? He is my son, but the in-laws seem to take over and we no longer count. It may seem rash that the OP put the house up for sale as quickly as he did, but he's definitely not wrong on principle. It's beyond ungrateful to let someone pay nearly all of your expenses and then treat them like second-rate citizens. Really, losing a house shouldn't be half as scary as losing your entire family, but it sounds like the original poster's son was willing to make that sacrifice just to please a bunch of people he'd barely met. A lot of commenters question why this whole family needed to move in together with the OP's son, yet somehow look down on the OP's family. But that's really not the shocking part of this. It doesn't matter if they're poor, grifters, whatever. People will look down on other people for just about anything, and people especially like looking down on anyone from New Jersey. But the really sad part is that even in their private phone call, it doesn't sound like the son even entertained the idea of taking his family's side. But 30 days is a long time. Hopefully the son will come around before the eviction goes through. And if the fiance really needed the OP's second home to put her whole family up, we'll see if the engagement even lasts a month anyway. An angry woman hater screamed at me for warning him an electronic purchase wouldn't work, then got so embarrassed he had to have his wife return it for him. I worked as a department manager in home electronics while I was going to college. I went on to get a master's degree in engineering. I mention this because I'm female and have worked in fields where people tend to expect to encounter males, especially in positions of authority. A guy was looking for an adapter for a device he was purchasing. For some reason, our buyers didn't stock this particular adapter, but I had the exact same device at my house and had been through the challenge challenge of finding the very same adapter this dude needed. He brought a different adapter to the counter along with the device, and I mentioned the adapter wasn't compatible. He said I didn't know what I was talking about. I tried to explain I had the same device and had found the adapter at a different retailer up the street, but he interrupted and started yelling, calling me little girl and demanding to see the manager. He said, and I do mean man, because I want to talk to the guy in charge. All this over a simple $5 adapter. I stayed calm because I've been yelled at many times by unruly customers, and I found it was best to let them vent and not react. I said, I am the manager, and he went completely berserk at that, screaming with so much rage, he looked like every blood vessel in his neck was going to rupture. He yelled that I was lying and called me every insulting female term in the book. A male employee was making his way toward the commotion at this point, and when the customer saw him, he yelled, "You need to stop hiring stupid B words. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She said this adapter won't work for this device." The employee who approached was on my team and was trained by me. He said, "Sir, this is our manager. She's very knowledgeable. If she says it's not compatible, then it's not compatible." I had to strongly school my expression to not smirk or laugh at that point. The dude had been relatively calm talking to my team member and instantly flipped back to full-on volcano when he turned to me. I simply let him yell and rung up his items. He yelled for another 20 seconds or so before realizing I was waiting for him to pay. By this point, about 10 employees were standing there. He called me several more foul names as I gave him his receipt and pointed to the return policy, just in case it didn't work out for him. 45 minutes later, a woman came in with the adapter, receipt, and ripped up packaging. She said she needed to return the item. She had a very sheepish expression. I said I needed to try to fix the packaging because the return policy, as explained on the receipt, required the packaging to be intact. She said, "I'm sorry, my husband bought this, and I'm guessing you dealt with him. I apologize for how he treated you." She was very soft-spoken, and all I could imagine was how this dude probably treated her. I had a lot of sympathy for her, and appreciated her courage to apologize. I said I would fix the packaging, and I offered to call the other store that did sell the adapter to see if they had it in stock. She thanked me about 20 times after I called, and had them put one on hold for her. She left with a smile and picked up the adapter. I saw that couple every now and then after that. The man would never come to the counter. He would just sneer at me from 10 feet away while I helped his wife, or take his wife by the elbow to someone else to be rung up. The moral of the story, as far as I see it, even if a customer is correct about something, yelling never fixes the problem. It's just as easy to speak politely and firmly to ask for what you want. Why is that so hard for so many people? I imagine jerks like this dude had parents who would give them anything they wanted to stop their 2-year-old tantrums, and they just never outgrew it. And the rest of the world pays the price. There are too many babies going around in adult-sized bodies. Everything the OP says is spot on. There are too many customers like this, and they seem to love electronics stores for some reason. Putting aside all of his rants about the OP being a woman, there's no point in taking your business to professionals if you think you know more than they do. But most importantly, the OP had a great chance to be petty here, and did the right thing anyway. She was under no obligation to take a return that violated store policy, let alone to call the store right down the street when she'd already told the customer where it was located. Everyone who's ever worked with the public knows what it's like to have that one moment where you get to decide whether you want to continue providing excellent service to someone who's treated you badly. The OP took the high road, and should be an example to all of us. An entitled Karen can't control her fake service dog at the hotel pool and yells at me for doing my job. I had my first encounter with a Karen about a week ago. I work at a beachside resort hotel as a pool attendant, and since we are a summer vacation spot, we get all sorts of people here. The pool opens at 10 a.m. sharp, and since I get to work at 8 o'clock, it gives me time to vacuum the pool, sweep, and take out the trash. Around 9:40, a blonde woman with the Karen haircut comes in with a little lapdog. My work has a strict no pets policy, unless they are a service dog, so I walk over to her and gently inform her that the pool isn't open yet. She asks if she can sit on the chairs around the pool, and I say yes, as she wouldn't be getting in my way as I vacuum the pool. I then tell her that pets are not allowed in the pool unless they're service animals. She doesn't respond, so I say it again. No response. I say it a third time, and she just blows up and yells that he isn't a pet, he's a service dog. I respond with, "Okay, ma'am, I'm sorry for the confusion. What service does your dog provide you?" She then yells, "Wherever I go, the dog goes." I back away and apologize, giving her the benefit of the doubt. Then I go back to vacuuming the pool. Once it hits 10 o'clock, the pool opens and she is allowed to swim. I see her get up and tell her service dog to stay as she gets in the water. The second she gets in the water, the dog gets up and runs over to the pool edge. It starts yipping excitedly and tries to jump in. I have had people bring in service animals before, and they all have been well trained. When they were commanded to stay, they stayed. I was still sort of on the fence about it being a service dog, so I didn't ask her to leave. But she left on her own an hour later after she couldn't get her dog to settle down enough to allow her to go swimming without the dog trying to jump in. This OP might be too trusting for their own good. If it doesn't have a vest, it's not a service dog. If the owner can't tell you what service it provides, it's not a service dog. This person was well in their right to kick Karen out the moment she couldn't answer a simple question. And frankly, that's what they should have done. People like this Karen are the reason so many businesses are putting stricter rules in place to keep fake service animals out. A place I used to go with my family every summer used to allow pets, as long as they were well trained, until they got so overrun with emotional support animals that they stopped allowing any pets at all, unless you could prove they were trained and certified service animals. Liking animals is great. Nobody's hating on Karen for loving her dog. But truly caring about an animal means training it well enough that it doesn't become a liability wherever it goes, which apparently is wherever Karen goes. This poster should have sent her packing to go right home until she's had her obedience training. Then again, maybe not. Maybe OP handled it perfectly. What would you do in this situation? Leave a comment below and let us know. Click one of the videos on screen right now.